It was a cold, autumn morning when the courtroom buzzed with the sound of murmured conversations. People settled into their seats as the judge, a stern woman in her mid-50s, took her place at the bench. The case that day was simple enough on paper: an assault charge against a man named David Winters. But there was far more than met the eye in this seemingly routine trial. David had been in trouble before, but this time the stakes were higher. Across the courtroom, on the opposite side of the defense table, sat Evelyn Harper, the prosecutor. Evelyn was a confident woman in her early 30s, with sharp features that matched her sharp mind. She had a reputation in the courthouse for being tough, relentless, and capable of making the most complex cases seem like child's play. Yet, there was a particular fire burning inside her as she prepared to face David Winters in court. David had been accused of assaulting a young man in a bar fight. The details were murky, but the evidence seemed to point directly to him. To Evelyn, this was just another case to win, another notch in her belt. But what she didn't know was that David Winters was not the simple man he appeared to be. David had walked into the courtroom that morning wearing a tailored suit, looking every bit the part of a successful businessman. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair, and a demeanor that was hard to place. He could easily blend in among the city's elite, but he preferred to keep a low profile. Many knew him as a man who kept to himself, rarely participating in social events, and whose past seemed like a mystery. That was exactly how he liked it. No, one needed to know what he did when he wasn't in the public eye. The trial began, and Evelyn took her place to present the case. She looked at David across the room, observing his calm demeanor. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice smooth and commanding, "today you will hear the evidence that proves David Winters is guilty of assaulting a man at a local bar. This man has a history of violence, and today justice will be served." David sat quietly, his hands folded on the table in front of him, his expression impassive. He didn't seem worried. Evelyn couldn't help but wonder about him. There was something about his presence, his calmness, that made her uneasy. She dismissed the feeling, focusing instead on the task at hand. After all, she had an airtight case. She called her first witness, a bartender who had witnessed the altercation. The bartender described how David had started a confrontation with a man at the bar, throwing punches after a verbal exchange turned heated. Evelyn's eyes gleamed as she turned to look at David, convinced that she had him cornered. David's defense attorney, a soft-spoken man named Richard Callahan, stood up to cross-examine the bartender. Richard was a seasoned lawyer, known for his ability to peel apart testimonies and expose flaws in the prosecution's case. His questions were calculated, designed to show that the bartender's recollection of events might be faulty. "Did you actually see my client throw the first punch?" Richard asked calmly, leaning over the table. The bartender hesitated. "Well, no. I didn't see the beginning of the fight. I just saw David, Mr. Winters, fighting with the other guy." Richard nodded slowly, turning back to the jury. "So, you didn't actually see my client start the altercation, did you?" Evelyn clenched her jaw, but kept her cool. She knew the bartender's testimony wasn't perfect, but it was all she had. Richard Callahan's cross-examination was crafty, but Evelyn wasn't about to lose this case. After several more witnesses testified, it was David's turn to take the stand. He stood up, his movements deliberate and measured. Evelyn was still convinced he was guilty, but she couldn't deny the charisma he exuded as he walked to the witness stand. She couldn't help but study him more closely. David gave his testimony with such precision that Evelyn felt almost disarmed. He claimed that he had been provoked by the other man and that he had acted in self-defense. His calm demeanor seemed to resonate with the jury. There was something about his words that made people believe him, even if they didn't want to. Evelyn's turn to cross-examine had arrived. She stood, adjusted her suit, and walked slowly over to the witness stand. Her voice was steady but cold as she addressed David. "You claim you were acting in self-defense," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "But what exactly did the other man do to provoke you? Was it just the words, or was there something more?" David's expression remained unchanged. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving Evelyn's. "I'm not The one who started the fight, he said quietly. But I'm not going to let someone throw a punch at me without defending myself. Evelyn nodded slowly. She was about to press further when she caught something in David's eyes, a flicker almost imperceptible, but enough to make her pause. Her instinct screamed at her to keep going, but something told her there was more to David Winters than met the eye. She took a breath and decided to shift her line of questioning. So, Mr. Winters, you say you acted in self-defense. But tell me, do you have any prior history of violence? Any run-ins with the law? David didn't flinch. I have no criminal record, he said firmly. Evelyn wasn't convinced. She was about to ask another question when she heard a faint sound from behind her, an unfamiliar voice calling her name. Excuse me, Miss Harper? She turned, confused. A man in a dark suit had entered the courtroom, his presence commanding attention. He wasn't a member of the defense team or the prosecution, and she couldn't immediately place him. He was older with salt and pepper hair, and his face was marked with the kind of authority that made people listen when he spoke. The judge raised an eyebrow at the interruption. What is it, sir? She asked, clearly irritated. The man approached the bench and leaned in to speak to the judge, whispering something that caused her to look at him in surprise. After a brief exchange, the judge nodded and gestured for him to approach. To Evelyn's astonishment, the man stepped forward, addressing the court with a calm but firm voice. Your Honor, I must inform you that I am head of internal affairs for the police department, and I have some important information regarding the defendant, David Winters. The courtroom fell silent. Evelyn's mind raced as she tried to process what was happening. The man, this official, did not look like someone who would make a random appearance in the middle of a trial unless it was important. The judge motioned for him to continue. The man looked at David Winters and then back at the court. I have just been made aware of the fact that the defendant, Mr. Winters, has a long history of working within the police force. In fact, he is the current head of internal affairs for the department. This case, therefore, has a unique set of circumstances that have yet to be fully explored. Evelyn's mouth went dry. The man's words felt like a bombshell. David Winters wasn't just some businessman or random guy. He had the authority and resources of one of the most powerful positions in law enforcement. The realization hit Evelyn like a wave. The head of internal affairs continued, I must also inform you that I have personally reviewed this case, and while it may appear that Mr. Winters was involved in the altercation, we believe his actions were justified. This is a matter of self-defense. I strongly urge the court to consider these new revelations in your deliberations. Evelyn stood there, stunned. She had no idea who she was dealing with. David Winters wasn't a nobody as she had assumed. He wasn't some random man she could easily manipulate with her prosecutorial skills. He was a person of significant power, and she had completely underestimated him. As the trial continued, Evelyn found herself grappling with the complexity of the case. She couldn't just rely on her usual tactics. She had misjudged David Winters, and the consequences of that mistake were beginning to unfold before her. The case would no longer be just about the assault. It was now about a powerful man in a position of influence, a man who knew how to navigate the intricate systems of power that Evelyn had always believed herself to master. In the end, the jury returned with a verdict of not guilty. David Winters walked out of the courtroom with his head held high, his secret safe for now. Evelyn, still in shock, watched him go, realizing too late that she had called him a nobody, not knowing he was a man who could bring down anyone who crossed him. The courtroom buzzed as the news spread, but it was clear that David Winters had won this round, and Evelyn Harper, once so sure of herself, had learned a hard lesson in the most unexpected of ways.